about is the revolution that we are right now. This is the third revolution. And I think I want people to understand that we are in a historical turning point. So
we are people who actually care about what they are doing, but we also care about our country. The only way for us to assert our sovereignty, even this far, is to actually show up when our country needs us. Remember that the young people, our young brothers, our younger cousins, our younger siblings who are out on the streets are facing odds like we can't even imagine. They are standing in the line of fire.
They're being shot.
They're being shot at.
Yeah. Washeke says IMF equals payday loan. And then Akini Adoyo says, Mimi, when they explain the finance bill to in the Luo, I changed my generation to Z. Nasirudi huko jenzenu anguka nayo. And then I see Washeke here saying, like issues on the finance bill, like the housing levy. Stephen JJ says it should be for development only. That's the money that comes from the IMF.
When you borrow.
Yes. And then Evans Marube says IMF loan and micromanage you. IMF loan and micromanage you. They did with Moi too. Kibaki and Uhuru preferred Chinese for loans. Stephen JJ says, but our constitution says we should only borrow for development. Yeah, that's very correct.
Correct.
And then DJ Sunny Sistuk is in the building and says, Mika's picture finally changed. That shows how many weeks DJ Sunny Sistuk has been skipping the show.
No, Sunny has been on the road. Sunny has been on the road, but you guys cannot.
No, but you can still watch the show on the road. We have truck drivers.
No, but on the road during our
even
show.
While DJing,
so while so now on a loose Friday, kule kepfia mulikuwa mnataka aweke
hapo kando. It's just a screen, ana side moja anasikiza muziki.
Sunny, I tried.
And then the other side anasikiza one
Sunny uanguke nayo.
Yeah,
I tried.
Now, Sunny, I'm challenging you to challenge the people of North Carolina to come to the IMF protest that's happening on the 20th of July, next Saturday. It's only a 5-hour drive. Yeah?
It's what day?
Saturday. 12:30 to 3:30 p.m.
Next Saturday.
Yes, next Saturday.
And hakuna heat wave?
Hakuna heat wave. So DJ Sunny Sistuki, kama mtachukua kombi ama kama mtachukua Nissan, it's just a one-day affair. Come
perfect combi.
Yes, and then there's Swahili Village is not too far from there. Kama mnataka kwenda huko, like after that Swahili Village DC.
They can andamana to Swahili Village.
Yeah, people can andamana, and go to Swahili Village after that. So please, yeah, Nasani, I'm also gonna put you on the spot again. Nitakutumia flyer yetu. Please share it on your profile. If you can't make it, we know you are busy DJ, umekuwa celeb squeezy, umefikele level ingine, but please share it on your social media pages. We'll be very appreciative of that, because our watu wote on the path from North Carolina all the way to DC, Kinamika, Katikati, Richmond, and all these other cities. I'm sure there are many people who want to come for that mandamano that's going to be at the IMF.
And by the way, you have Amtrak and Megabus. If you want to come into DC, those two
yes,
modes.
Amtrak and Megabus, very good modes of coming to DC, especially pia watu wa all the way from Delaware. That's a very cost-effective way of coming to DC. Now, I have a Kinyodo here says, is asking, lakini kwa nini tulipe? Si reparation bado hatujapata ama namna gani watunguyas. I think this was in response to that pay bill comment. And then Rasvik is keeping it simple. Ruto must go. Keeping it simple. Udimadhange karibu sana. Udi anasema we need to do what Burkina Faso has done. Yes, and Burkina Faso is also moving at a very high speed. I think we also need to pay attention to what they're doing with their leader Ibrahima Traore. And then I can see here Stephen Batty from Sambaza Podcast says, me the day Saka 1998, I had the Denmark envoy complain that they're not getting contracts from Kenya as they are being sourced elsewhere is the day I knew these people, Muzungu, want a stake in our country. That, of course, is no secret. And then Steve Gitao, karibu sana. Steve Gitao says, it does, but we borrow to pay to pay debt and pay salaries, going against the constitution. This is what's causing our debt to balloon. And that's where I was asking, does IMF have a way of ring fencing or forcing us to use the money for certain things? But we'll talk about that later. DJ Sani Sistuki says, I'll do better. So I don't know whether he's saying he'll do better in terms of watching the show while DJing, or if he'll do better in terms of like making sure that he comes for the protest next Saturday at IMF HQ2 Pennsylvania Avenue in DC with Mbogia Watwa, North Carolina.
And I wanted to say regarding the protest this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You asked the question, and the second part of the question was, why should Kenyans in the diaspora care, and why should they be involved? We are the only population of Kenyans who have this leverage point. I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, but I can.
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
The IMF, by the way, we released our poster should be about 48 hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
Within 24 hours, and these people have been quiet on this issue since it started. The last statement from the IMF on Kenya, I was just checking on their website, was about the structure of the loans that they had been imposing on Kenya, the structural adjustment programs and the agreements that were signed. That was the last communique. We released this poster on social media, letting Kenyans know that we are tunaenda kuwasalamia, si ndio?
Correct.
Within, I think, 12 hours, a statement was read by a very, coy and what looked like a very confused press person,
mm-hmm.
saying that they cared about what had happened in Kenya and they were concerned about the families, and they were their purpose is to work with the Kenya government for economic stability and sustainable growth, whatever that, they kind of
Mm-hmm.
just use that kind of jargon. They also released a public statement and created an FAQ page. So Kenyans who are in the diaspora, if you're close to DC, if you're 2-3 hours away, please come, because the numbers make a difference. It makes a difference when they see that we are people who actually care about what they are doing, but we also care about our country. The only way for us to assert our sovereignty, even this far, is to actually show up when our country needs us. Remember that the young people, our young brothers, our younger cousins, our younger siblings who are out on the streets are facing odds like we can't even imagine. They're standing in the line of fire.
They're being shot.
They're being shot at.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for you to just come on that day and put a stake on the ground and say this is not acceptable for our country is really important. So please, be there or be square.
Yes, so that's going to be Saturday, July the 20th, 12:30 to 3:30, IMF HQ2. I think the address is 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue. An easy way to remember is that the White House is on 1800 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also going to be a good tourism day. Unaweza kuja asubuhi ufanye tourism kidogo, by 12:30 unakuja hapo protest, like we do what we have to do on the protest, like we've been doing in the previous protests, and then after 3:30 people break away and you can go to Swahili Village. It's right there, and you can continue touring DC. Sunset, I think, is around 8:30 p.m. So it's gonna be a very good day, because at the end of the day, one thing that I like about Kenyans back home and over here, even in the worst moments, we still find humor, we still find joy. You'll still find people singing, you'll still find people dancing, even in the worst of moments when we are facing, like an enemy that's killing us, that's abducting us, that's doing all kinds of things. And this is happening to people back home. Out here, I know people are scared. Oh my God, staki sura yangu ionekane Citizen ama sura yangu ionekane NTV. So you're scared of sura yako kuonekana Citizen or NTV.
Na kuna vijana
who are being shot.
Correct.
They're being abducted.
Killed. They're being abducted.
Yes.
And these guys are still going out. So I think this is one of those moments. This is one of those historical moments where your kids will ask you, where were you when this was happening? And your grandkids, they will be asking you. And you remember those lies we used to be told by, like people in the older generation, that I always used to be number one on Nini? Guess what? Nowadays it's digital footprints. You will not be able to lie to your grandkids or your children, so when people were being killed, like, what were you doing? I know you were here, but what exactly were you doing? That's a question that you will have to deal with, because this is a historical moment. Whatever way, shape, or form you want to look at this is a historical moment. You know, our first moment in history was 1963, when we got independence after violent uprising from the Mau Mau and other groups that were fighting them colony. Then our second uprising was in 1990 with Saba Saba. You know, like that was the second revolution. That's what gave way to multipartyism. Before that, you know, like for the people who are not there, you could not even speak against the president. You could not even say anything.
Ulikuwa lazima kwenda kitabu ya KANU.
Ulikuwa lazima, you are a KANU Life member. You know, like everyone was a KANU Life member. You're not allowed to form any other political party. Quick deviation of the story to show you how things were bad. When I was in standard 5, I was 11 years old. And my mother reminds me this story until today. She was called to school. For those who know, I attended Moi School. It was Moi Educational Center in the Nairobi West South Sea area. So my mother was called to school because I wrote an essay, what was called a composition against Moi.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I was 11 years old.
Terroristic characters.
I was 11 years old, and my mother was called to school.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, like when she was called, I was put in some kind of execution panel because there were teachers who were surrounding me, plus the headmaster. At that time, I can't remember, it wasn't Mr. Ketera, I think it was Mr. Morioki, that surrounded me, and they were trying to...
Staff room ama kwa office?
No, it was in the headmaster's office. This was very serious.
Ish.
Yeah, this was very serious. So they had surrounded me and they were asking, you know, like, where exactly is this kid getting these ideas from? So I think it was a mixture of concern and also the fact that even those teachers themselves were in fear, because this was Moi School.
Correct.
This was Moi School. He used to drive by and give us free orbits from wherever, you know, like he was coming from. We were a private school, but we used to get maziwa ya nyayo. So there was
na biscuit.
So there was
a
issue.
palpable fear.
Yes, so there was a palpable fear. So now, as thinking as a grown-up, there was a palpable fear. But then, you know, like I survived, you know, like that execution panel. But now going back later to think about it, because my mother has been always very apolitical. So she wasn't so clearly, and even some teachers knew her, so clearly they knew it wasn't my mother. But when now going back and remembering, I used to read for my grandmother the newspaper, the one in Swa and the one in English. Yeah, and the one in English, she would select. My grandmother did not speak any English, so she would select, you know, like you know, like a picture she likes and tell me, okay, so your story, tell me what it's talking about. Now, little did I not know that at the time, because those days the newspapers, my goodness, they were so juicy. They had like some very, very serious stories, you know, like the deep investigative
Standard,
stories.
Daily Nation,
Ouko Inquiry,
Kenya Times.
Nanini. So I was accumulating that information without my knowledge. Kenya Times ilikuwa ya gava.
Yeah, but those were the papers then.
Yeah, those were the
those
papers,
only
then.
papers.
But Nation, Standard, Taifa Leo, they had some very serious
Weekly
stories.
Review.
Yes, they had some very serious stories, which is where I started getting, you know, like I was reading these op-eds against President Moi, and I think those are the things that made, I can't remember what the composition was about, but you know, like
My Life and Times as a Dissident.
Yeah, and that's how dangerous. That's just how dangerous things were. So I was just coming to that point that this was the second liberation.
Yeah.
Things were that bad that even as a child, you know, like you could be, something could happen to you.
But
just
Ali,
because you said
that was
something.
dangerous. You
was
see
dangerous.
you see when mom was being called in.
Yeah.
It's down of they want to know, well, who have you been hanging around, and are these people influencing you?
Yes.
And those are the people they need to go after so they
Yes.
can save their jobs. Because
Yes.
they're in Moi School.
Yes, I remember in that
And
same
very
school,
highly paid.
in that same school, I was punished for what we used to go, like when Moi would drive by Langata Road, school would stop,
And you go
and then
to
we'd be
the
given
gate.
flags.
Yeah, you go to
No,
the gate.
not to the gate, all the way to Langata Road. And we would be given flags. Yeah, school would stop, would be given flags to wave. I remember the particular time I was punished, the Romanian president had come to Kenya. Remember, Romania had a dictator called Nicolae Ceausescu.
Correct.
We're going to, and this is where Moi also learned some of his tactics. Yeah, so this guy had come to Kenya. So guess what? They also gave us Romanian paper flags. So hata Romanian president anapita anaona, watoto wa Kenya, they love Romania. But now we've been forced to come out. So Mimi, at that point, I already felt like there was something wrong with this. So Mimi nilikuwa sipepei hizo flags. Kumbe there was a teacher who was looking
and seeing
and writing down names.
Monitor.
Because we're supposed to prepare those flags like
and
a
smile,
problem and smile and be happy. Me, I was like, Apana, why are we preparing these flags? Kwanza Romanian flag, I remember it had some similar colors to like kind of like the German flag. But I'm like, what is this flag? Why are we preparing? But but those ones were dealt with in school. Hiyo madhea kuitwa. Hizo tulikuwa tunapanishiwa to school. And I remember I was also once punished for the two-finger salute. That was very dangerous. You know, I was a kid and I did not know.
This guy was a rebel.
I had no idea. That's Moi Educational Center. In fact, anyone who went to Moi Educational Center, one day I will do an expose about how that school was built with corruption money. Because this is the season for revelation.
Yeah.
Gen Zs wamefungwa gates. That school was financed. That school was financed by proceeds. It was financed by proceeds from corruption, and it's there. It's a good school, but it was financed by proceeds from corruption. We used to have prisoners from Langata come and do, like
cut
slash grass.
Grass.
Yeah, I mean, but that's right there.
Free labor.
That is corruption. Teachers were poached from public schools. They were poached from public schools and brought there. I remember we had a CRE teacher. I'm not going to mention the name, tutabana jina lake kwa sasa, but she was promoted from being a CRE teacher to the central bank. How does that happen? CRE teacher to central bank.
Did she have hips?
Yeah. How does that happen?
What year was this?
No, we're not going to mention that. Iyo tutabana iyo hapo. Let's get back to the story. What I was talking about is the revolution that we are right now. This is the third revolution. And I think I want people to understand that we are in a historical turning point. So don't second guess, if you're free next Saturday, if you've been second guessing, the first, the second protest, this is the one we want you to come for. Don't worry about being seen on TV. The more of us that are seen on TV, the better it is for everyone. Like someone in Kenya was actually telling me, some member of parliament, we're not going to mention his name, because that person told me in confidence that some member of parliament in Kenya was asking who I am, and this goes to show you that we're out here in the diaspora supporting what's happening on the ground, but these lazy members of parliament who've been bought and voted yes are concerned that this thing has gone global. It's of course across the country, but it's gone global.
The other thing I want to also point out to Kenyans in the diaspora is that this president has invested a lot in his global credentials. If you've been observing him over the last couple of years, he was mostly a local leader, but then when he started gunning for the presidency, he came to the US, here in DC. There's pockets of people here who support him. He was invited to Chatham House, gave a speech there, and then almost immediately after he became president, he started doing this wild tour of the world.
Global tour, yeah.
I think in the last 2 years, I hear he has gone over 60 countries, trying to build this image of a global
international leader.
And Gen Zs have stripped the emperor naked in front of the world to kind of show the world and remind the world who this person really is. Now, if we don't support them, given the odds that they're facing, I think it will be a big shame. And as you're saying, this is a moment in history that we can't ignore. This is a moment in history that's going to be talked about. In fact, Raila Amolo Odinga himself said that even during our most radical, even during our most fierce, during previous revolutions, think about like Mau Mau.
Yes.
What generation of Kenyans have actually stormed Parliament building?
None. This was the first
without hesitation.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Without hesitation. And even after guns were drawn, bullets were being fired, snipers were waiting for them. These young people
they kept moving forward.
They kept moving forward, and they asserted their constitutional right.
Yes. Unomike, you're
So-
gonna read some of the comments because comments zangu hapa zimepotea from the last comment that I read. I can't remember.
Wacha nisalimie watu wa
Yeah.
nini
Ebu
YouTube
salimia
hapa.
watu wa YouTube and
What?
then Unomike.
Jodo ameongea mbaya huko.
Wacha niongee tu hapa, tutaingia huko. Stephen Okoth, Udi, Amos Omayo, Anet Karanja, Lino Gondi, karibuni. Some of those comments over there have I guess been overtaken by events. Lakini tuendele, let's go back to Facebook.
Okay, Unomike, there's a Facebook comments.
There's a nani over here. Evans Marube has actually suggested something interesting. Can you as well reach on X space for the IMF protest? There's a big audience of Kenyan diaspora Gen Zs there.
Okay, yeah.
Point
Yeah.
to note.
Yes, point to note.
If you can have a next space about July 20th.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. That's
yes,
something
that's a
we'll
really
do,
good
and I
idea.
think
Yeah.
we'll just look for a host, like who's popular on X, and try to go there and co-host with them.
Thank you Washeke for pointing that out. Stephen JJ says yes, I remember hata mimi nilikuwa hiyo squad ya kuenda Langata Road na mabendera.
Yep.
School stops munaweka frontline mazee na
Yes,
na bendera.
yes, dictatorship.
Washeke says yes, and this is true. Ali was radicalized kitambo. Karibu sana Udi.
I've never been radical.
Udi has moved from YouTube to FB.
Udi aliepa.
Yeah,
He wants his
I
fun
don't know
patch
if those were austerity measures that he was talking about hapo juu ya gari.
to live and die in LA. Langata. Anyway, CRE teacher to Central Bank, Ali Badawi. That's a juicy expose. Jonas McClout, it's time for ICC to dust up Ruto files and add Mukuru massacre. Evans Marube and Jodo Molo, don't mistake what I said. Ruto was creating clout around the world. What is mbaya about saying that?
Bado ni kuongea mbaya juu ya Ruto.
Oh.
Which is allowed.
okay.
No, also I wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not a point of correction, but I think we could say point of correction, and this was pertaining to the land issue, because initially it shocked. It was floating around until Alice Wahome went on to Spice, the then cabinet secretary for land, to clarify that freehold land was not going to be
Affected.
Affected, yeah.
All they wanted to do was just the idea was you're enjoying the amenities of taxpayers.
Correct.
All they wanted you to do was to chip in.
Yeah.
But in no way was land going to be your land was going to, and she clarified that.
But she was talking about freehold folks in
urban cities,
in urban
areas.
So
like in Nairobi,
so not Ali's Magadi,
no.
not Ali's Magadi that he can
And
take
then
pictures from.
another thing
not
is that
that.
in that land, another issue that most people don't usually talk about is there was a clause whereby they were saying that in that land, if right now we went to Omosh or Ushago, and we were digging, and then Omosh Ushago decided to squat oil out, that was government property.
Yeah, in fact, but
that is what the issue they were trying to need. There's usually this like way whereby you get rights to it, but what they were trying to do is they were trying to take away rights from the land. Any resources that are coming from the land, the rights was going to be going away from you completely. Not that share where it is right now. There's a share where yes, it's government. The government is going to do, but you're gonna get like you are going to get rich out of the minerals because they're in your land. So them they wanted that the land is yours, the minerals are ours.
The other thing I want to point out, and I appreciate the comment. You remember this story about a guy who was in a tent in the desert, and he had a camel that was also cold, and then the camel asked to put its nose, then its ears, then its head. Then by the end of the evening, he was outside, and the
Kicked
camel
him
was
out.
outside. So this is how governments operate. This is how they actually introduce legislation or introduce policies. They were not going to go all out in the finance bill. I think a couple of mistakes were made there because too much was put on the plate. But the reason I'm saying that is, take the land issue, for example. Yes, it is true they came back and clarified that no, it's not from ancestral land and freehold land, it's just for municipal land. Ultimately, what they were trying to do is to create a system of liens. A system of liens where government can tax your land, whether it's freehold or
leasehold.
or land that is within or without from a municipality. Ultimately, that's what they're trying to create. They're trying to create a system, and the way you do it is you do it progressively. You introduce one thing this year, and then the next year you introduce something else, and then 10 years down the line, you've boiled this frog so slowly, people don't even realize that there was something significant change until you're losing your land. So the system of liens, the way it works, government taxes your land. If you don't pay the taxes or you don't put it to productive use, they come and they repossess it, right? That's essentially what they were trying to do. So whatever clarifications they give, maybe it's true. However, the intent...
I think those clarifications came about because people started crying foul because they read into the stuff.
And Gen Zs, credit to Gen Zs.
Correct.
They didn't just see what was happening today, but they've been able to articulate what is going to happen in the future and what it means not just for them, but for future generations.
Correct.
That's why they're out on the streets and fighting.
Oh my goodness.
And then another thing that I liked about is that they started putting more emphasis. They realized, so if it's this finance bill that's the problem, what about all these other proposed bills? And they started looking into all the other proposed bills. And guess what? In every bill, they're finding an issue. Every bill, they're finding an issue.
So the example,
it's major issues.
The example we gave earlier of budgeted corruption, unless you are able to see the connection between not just the finance bill, but the conflict of interests, right? Unless you can see the connection that they are budgeting this first dark money and then over budgeting for not just collections, but then for applications to government agencies, then knowing that on the tail end, they're creating another legislation to kind of create the siphon, right? Unless you're able to see those connections, you're going to just kind of endorse it. And by the way, these structural adjustment programs are being implemented across Africa. Apparently, I don't know the details, but apparently Tanzanians have been paying this kind of massive debts for the last 2 years, and they have not complained. Ghana have been doing it, I think, for even a longer time than that.
Yeah, Ghana been
but Ghana defaulted.
Yeah, Ghana defaulted. Ghana defaulted. Bondholders were forced to take a haircut, and by a haircut meaning you're forced to take
37%. I think
you're forced to take sometimes even less than the face value of the bond that you paid for it, or you're told to wait. Maybe you're in retirement, you want to cash your money on Ambuapana, wait for another 10 years.
You wait until we tell you when there's money.
Yeah, so that's interesting because there's the Ghana situation, there's Tanzania also going through their own situation. Mozambique, they were able to successfully take to court a case of odious debt. Odious debt is debt that has been procured, but it's not in the books.
It's not on the books.
Yeah, think about it like Amex is sending you a bill for $5,000 that you bought a watch, but you never bought a watch. So you're like, why am I paying for something that I never bought? Which Kenya has been paying debt, and that's one of the reasons why one of the things that is being called for is a debt audit, because once that debt audit is done, ndio mambo itachemka. People think that things are bad right now. Once that debt audit is properly done and it's known, because Kenya currently owes 11, maybe close to $12 trillion dollars, and it is said, Kenya shillings, no, not dollars, and it is said a good chunk of that is odious debt, meaning it's debt that was, that was not procured, or it's not known. There's no record of what it was used for.
So Jimmy Wanjigi was on Spice. He was being interviewed, and he gave a breakdown of the $2 billion Eurobond that was procured. You're supposed to be able, so like he was mentioning, once you get debt, it's supposed to go into that consolidated fund, because it's supposed to be for development.
The money is supposed to go in that one bank account.
That one bank account. It's one, and it is known.
And it has control not just by Parliament but the Auditor General.
No, so he's the guy who sees it. He
sees it and knows.
So the two
anaona pesa.
So there's $1 billion that never made it.
It just
and so he was giving examples of how it's supposed to be, because you're supposed to be able to trace how the money flows into the account. The funny thing is that money, $1 billion of that money, it's redacted. The way it's supposed to be flowing, the way it's supposed to be going, it's redacted. The other 1 billion, there's 1 billion, actually 1.8. So it was 2 billion and another 8 from JP Morgan Chase, and then 8 billion came, I think, from Citibank or whatever. So 1.8 can be traced. 1 billion,
and
that is the odious debt.
And then there's also another there's also another angle to this. So Gen Z is just I picked this off the internet, but they give this kind of plan on how these reforms that they're demanding are going to be implemented. Number 22 of those demands are that they conduct and publish an e-citizen platform revenue audit report. So I was looking at that and I remembered something I came across years back while I did some consulting work for government. So e-citizen is it's not tax based. You're not taxing citizen. You're collecting fees, right?
Correct.
You're collecting fees from for government services.
Mm-hmm.
There's an additional fee that's a service fee, 50 shillings. If you do any transactions today
on e-citizen, yeah,
right? There's a fee that's applied. It's not even statutory. It's just a transaction fee.
Yeah.
Okay.
When that fee was audited, every transaction there's a 50 shilling fee, and mind you, now there's like thousands and thousands of government services online.
Correct.
These are millions, billions of Kenya shillings that are being collected through this kind of channels. County governments are also doing the same thing, right? County governments also have their own systems. If you remember, those of you who live in Nairobi, it was so bad that these fees were being collected and disappearing into people's individual accounts. In fact, there was a point in time where the e-citizen account was a personal account. It was going to someone's account.
Wow.
It was going into someone's account.
Yeah.
So money that's being collected that's supposed to actually pay debt, give government services, kind of just falls to the crack in people's pockets.
Okay. A couple of comments here. Stephen Bati Sambaza says that land issue is a big problem. All land is government property. One mic, please. This is huge. CO small exat. And then Washeke says that system of liens on land was an avenue for politicians to grab land. Stephen Bati says mimi hii land bill nitaanguka nayo. And then I see Washeke here saying the debt audit is being done line by line on X. I have a war from Africans for Mental Health says shout out to LSK President Faith Odhiambo and all the members of LSK because and they held the Citizens Assembly via X. Worth a listen. Yes, the X, the talk, the space on Faith Odhiambo's page, it was nothing but fire. And then I have Evans Marube here says, by the way, what happened to Meg Whitman, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, kwani alicheza Ruto after state visit? And as you've noticed, she's nowhere to be seen. She's not made any public statement. We don't even know.
She's nowhere to be seen because she knows people are after her blood. Let's not pretend like she didn't try to. It's a win for an ambassador when you get a president to come home and sign a lot of deals, whereby you sign a lot of deals. Like when the deal between Ruto and Biden was supposed to be a very good thing for this ambassador. It was supposed to be something it was supposed to be a success, right? And we have people who speak and say on Twitter that there were reports whereby or stories about the finance bill that there was going to be just a little, like intelligence. IMF intelligently had advised the Kenyan president that, there's going to be protests, but it's going to be just a small, mild protest and it's going to go. That is why they were so arrogant about it in the first time, after the first protest. Then the second one, they were scared. Then when parliament was occupied is when they realized, it's not like we assumed it's going to be. The thing for me is this ambassador, we've had Kenyans complaining about her in all sense. First of all, they're saying appointments, the number of appointments booked and the number of visas that are denied, or visas, appointment books and visas accepted doesn't match at all. And Kenyans are saying the visa fee is going up every year, and they're saying, if you're not going to give us the visas, refund part of it, because some people are selling property, land, cows, and everything to apply for these visa fees. So it's like the embassy has become a cash cow, and Kenyans are mad about it. And then when the president goes for a trip, comes to your country, comes back with all these deals that don't really benefit anybody, and they really, man, Ruto gave a lot for so little.
But that has been his foreign policy.
Even
right?
the trade deal was
Yeah.
put away. The trade deal that that we could have come out with a lot was put away, and Liud gave a lot for
Yeah.
peanuts.
Mm-hmm. And now we are in the situation that we are in. But anyway, I want us to take a bit of a different trajectory here, Dr. Wangusi. Now, given the current situation, we already know the cabinet has been dissolved. The Inspector General of Police has resigned. And as per the televised handshake moment earlier this week, the president has signed the law to reconstitute IEBC. Now, in your view, what does the president have to do next to calm the country down? Because all these things is done so far, there's still no calm. You know, like, what is it that if you're one of his advisors, you know, and I don't mean those ones who make the billions, if you're just one of the genuine advisors, what would you be telling him to now do within like the next few weeks or the next month to get things calmed down?
Yeah, you're right. So he's trying to give the public token actions, and they're saying that it's not enough because these are problems that have been festering for a long time, and he's going to have to dig very deep to be able to placate the public. So, you know, he had a choice, and I've been thinking a lot about, like, if I was in his shoes, what would I have done? So I wake up and I'm called by my security chiefs, and I'm told, hey, you know, there's a discontent in the streets. There's kids on the street. They're protesting. They're calling for your resignation. What would I have done as a president? What would I have done as a president? And, you know, given that he painted or he modeled himself as the people's president or a hustler, one of
I'm one of you.
You know, I'm one of you. Just imagine if President Ruto, at the moment when these kids came at the gates of Parliament, he let them in, and he told them, yes, this democracy, this country belongs to you, this Parliament belongs to you. In fact, my SG, I'm a loyal member of the ODM party. My SG, Edwin Sifuna, when the Gen Zs came at the gates of Parliament, he was telling the security officers, one, put your guns down, and two, let them in. This is their house. That is the whole idea of democracy. What would he have had instead of killing these young people? To have actually given them,
He actually went and
because that is what they were not asking to depose him. They were asking to be listened to.
Correct.
So what if he had done that? What a moment it would have been, not just for the country, but for him as a leader. But instead, what did he do? First, he went underground. So it revealed a side of his personality we didn't even know existed. We've always kind of understood William Ruto as this larger-than-life, very bold personality. And when his people come to ask him questions about the promises that he made, he runs and hides. We saw helicopters kind of flying out of State House. You know, God knows if it was, you know, going to hide his family. And he didn't, for the whole day, he did nothing. And those were really, really important moments in the country's history. And then at the end of the day, instead of coming out and saying, my people, I have heard you, he demonizes the
Treasonous criminals.
calling the young people treasonous criminals. In other words, all of us, even us who are organizing constitutional and legal protests in the diaspora, are now treasonous criminals. I have to be afraid even to think about, like, going home, because you're thinking, am I going to be hauled off in the airport and then kind of disappear with, you know, with a hood over my head, right? He calls us treasonous criminals. At that moment, Kenyans knew who their president was. He looked scared of the people, but he also revealed the inner him. Then after calm kind of prevailed, he makes decisions to now start to, like, respond to the actual demands. And what he has basically done is lip service. Okay, you've dissolved the cabinet. I have a list here of government agencies. These are 39 government agencies: head of civil service, Kenyan, Kenya Power, Kenya Pipeline, you know, the Agricultural and Food Authority chair, Kenya Seed Company, Kenya Space Agency, Kenya Post Office Savings Bank. I would not bring this list if I hadn't actually checked that it was legit. Every one of these people, 40 government agencies, are headed by people from one community. And lo and behold, these people are from the same community as the president. What does that tell you? It tells you that he's using the Kenyan government as a cash cow. Back to the question about budgeted corruption. Because all these government agencies are going to have what? Contracts. Supply contracts.
Yes.
Then this kind of little outfits that are associated with him and his family.
So you're saying he put them in for...
What other reason? I mean, like...
So it's not community service, I'm just asking.
It is not community service. So the next thing he needs to do...
Sorry.
This tribal government that he has created needs to be reformed. I would suggest tomorrow, after he's done, you know, after the dust has settled on the cabinet, he goes and also releases them.
Parastatal and
If
heads.
he's gonna do what he said he's going to do, which is create a
and
broad...
be transparent.
And be transparent about it. Because you cannot lie to Kenyans anymore.
Wow.
You cannot hoodwink the public anymore.
Okay, so let me ask a question. So if he gets rid of, you know, like all those tribes, those fellow tribesmen that you have on that list,
Yeah.
will this calm people down?
No, I'm not talking about, like, this is one of the things. There's a whole
it's the beginning of the start.
But it's the beginning of the start. If you're going to tell Kenyans that you're going to create a broad-based government, let the people who head these government agencies and permeate government, let it be representative of Kenya, number one. Number two, let it be people who are qualified to do the job, so that we are not, so that we don't have this curse of like poor service delivery and money disappearing because you have incompetent people in government. Then there's the demands that Gen Zs have put in place. We are not asking for discussions.
No dialogue.
We are not asking for dialogue. We are asking for you to act. And those lists have, those things have been spelled out very clearly.
Okay. Mika had something that he wanted to add on to real quick. Mika.
No, I wanted to add on that list of where Dr. Angus is saying that in terms of appointments. And in appointments, he has cleared out the cabinet. You know what game Ruto plays is that most of his people, his inner people, his political appointees are going to be the cabinet. His inner people are the permanent. They're not called permanent secretaries these days. What are they called?
They're called principal secretaries.
They need, those are the people who need to go next. All of them. None of them should remain, because those are the people who he uses to run those ministries.
Yes.
And then in those ministries,
accounting officers. So nothing has changed, right?
In those ministries, also what needs to be happened, there needs to be a streamline of employees, because there've been a lot of hiring, like places like KRA. It's not Kenya Revenue Authorities, Kalenjin Revenue Authorities now. Right, so that also needs to be taken care of. And
let's be careful, with no offense to the Kalenjin people. These are also Kenyans. But it is wrong. It is unjust.
It looks very,
and it is damaging to a country when you have this kind of social structures being put in government. If the government is being, the word here is Kalenjinization of the nation. It's go far.
And then another thing, Ali, one thing that this one I'll tell the president for free. Thing that he needs to realize. I know you have your boys, right? But Sudi, Zahir, Farouk need to step away from government.
Murkomen.
Those expensive watches, eh?
Yeah, Murkomen, yeah. I'm just like his boys need to step away from the government. His boys cannot be seen. Like, we have videos you're seeing, the president is meeting with governors, but then we have Sudi is the one who's deciding who's talking to the president, who's not talking to the president. He's the one who's pushing people around his point. An MP telling governors what to do because he's the president boy. That's something he's supposed to do. Another thing, Mr. President, you are elected by yourself. We didn't elect your wife, we didn't elect your daughter. Your daughter addressing Kenyans, going to visit people in the hospital to speak in behalf of you, coming to address, those are things that actually anger people. Even in monarchies, you don't see that. King Charles is the king. You don't see Prince William walking around trying to talk to people unless it's an official duty. Even President Trump over here had to hire Ivanka, and Ivanka had to be seen within that position she's been hired. She wouldn't overstray or go sideways or go anything. So when you have the first family acting like the country is their own personal business, that pisses off. And then ule jamaa Murima pia na bibi yake. You can't have your wife's walking around lecturing people and trying to tell people what to do in life and how to live life. None of the previous first ladies have done that. That is why even that Gen Z came up with that skit and said that if you look at it, Baba Moi, who didn't have a first lady, took care of women issues better than these fat ladies. Yeye mwenyewe mwenye alikuwa ndiye mwanaume alichunga wamama na watoto kushinda first ladies wenye wako sahi. It's because your wives are so like your families are treating the country like it's their own personal business or personal playground. It was you who was hired, and you were hired under the constitution, as it's been said. You are the second arm of government, not the first one. The people are the first arm of government. So and then just put IEBC under Article 6 as it's supposed to be, and don't interfere when your friends get recalled and thrown out. You had 2 years to figure out how to do it. You used impunity and arrogance. Yeah, but if Ruto wants to finish his term, he has to do what the people are asking him.
Yeah, and I think generally there's a whole slew of things he needs to do. Reform the Electoral Boundaries Commission, restore some beneficial programs that were already in place, like Linda Mama, higher education loans. He has all these things to do. There's a laundry list, and this is in the public domain. It's very clear what needs to happen. Okay, the man needs to stop playing lip service with the Kenyan people.
Now, here's another thing. Because Ruto must go actually initially was just a slogan, but now it's getting really serious. It's getting very serious, and even with all these cosmetic changes that he's done for PR purposes, people are seeing through them, and Ruto must go is getting louder and louder. So what do you think, like when it comes to, because of course there's IEBC is being reconstituted, questionable also how it's politicians who are going to select those commissioners. But what do you think about recalling MPs now? If this, for example, if let's say he allows this process to go and he doesn't try to interfere like how he normally does, how can this effectively be done in such a way that if he decides that he's not resigning, he's gonna stay on in office, that's gonna make him a bit less potent? How can this be done?
So the thing that Kenyans need to understand, Kenyans in the diaspora as well, is that we are all subject to the same constitution and its limitations, right? Yes, we've had our young people get onto the streets and assert their sovereignty as per the constitution. But remember, we also don't want to make the mistakes of the past. We don't want to make the same mistakes that the Arab Spring and end up in a society that's just full of turmoil. That's not going to serve our long-term interests. We want to come out of this situation with a country that functions, a country that values our constitution and understands our constitution, but also a country that is at peace with itself. So I want to make that abundantly clear. The purpose of this revolution, in my mind, is to reawaken the social consciousness of the Kenyan people, but also put our leaders on notice. So let me just make that clear. We're not trying to, we're not looking for a coup. We don't want to burn down our own home because Kenya is our only home. How do we go about that? As you made the introduction earlier, you pointed out that I've had experience in campaigns and running for public office. I'm going to tell Kenyans here and now, it is not easy. Running for public office in Kenya, it is hostile, it is difficult, and campaigns are expensive. I'll focus on the last point, campaigns being expensive. We have leverage here in the diaspora because we control by last check, like $160 million dollars coming into the Kenyan economy. We can dictate who gets into those public offices. We have problems with our campaign financing laws, but then if we are going to actually have a legislature that's representatives of the values of Kenyans, which it isn't today. That's why these people were bought off and voted the way they were. There's going to have to be some political engagement that allows the diaspora, but also the Kenyans who are living at home, to actually get political actors in place who actually do what is in the best interest of the country. With respect to the
Dr.
president,
Angusi, I have a question before you move on.
Yeah.
Before you move on to that, I have a question on what you just said.
Yeah.
You make the finances of a campaign.
Yeah.
Because this is something I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
And for me, I think, what do you think is something that should be put as legislature to curb the need of making campaigns to be expensive in Kenya?
No,
Do you think there should be legislature whereby voter bribing, or rather voter paying, is illegal? If you do that, you go to jail immediately.
Yeah.
And also, do you think that there should be legislature whereby any debt incurred while you're campaigning should, in fact, if there's a certain amount that comes in, you should not be allowed to continue campaigning if you reach a certain threshold?
No.
Because I believe most of corruption is brought about because people get a lot of money to campaign, and then they have to figure out how to pay that money.
They have to figure out how to pay that money back. I get the question, and I'll tell you something about the United Kingdom. They do not have a constitution, right? In Germany, elections are observed by local populations, local citizens. In places like Senegal, we just had a young person, 40-something-year-old, become the president.
Is that the Traore guy?
Yes.
Okay.
No, Traore. Traore is that's Burkina Faso.
That's Burkina Faso.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Senegal is FAI. It's called FAI. Yeah.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with laws. Kenya has really good laws, by the way. Campaign financing laws are on the books. Campaign offenses or electoral offenses are on the books. All that is there. It has to do with the values that we have as Kenyans. And that's not something that President Ruto is going to change. That is not something the executive is going to change. That is going to have to come from us. Because when you're campaigning as an ethical candidate, a professor, a teacher, and then you go and you want to campaign with young people, and you're asked, before you speak to us, you have to give us money. Right?
Or a t-shirt or bread or sijui.
Yes, we understand you need these campaign materials, but there's a practice in Kenya.
Yes.
This started in the Moi era during the first multi-party election, where Kenyans were taught to monetize on campaigns, right?
It's that's what they know.
And that doesn't have to do with our politicians. That has to do with the Kenyan people. That is what needs to change. It's our value systems. We can have the best laws in the world, but they are only implemented, or they only come to life if we actually have the value systems that align to those laws.
But you know where my pushback will be on that, because I usually try to think of the layman. I mean, of course, I've not run for office like you have, but I've taken part in campaigns within Langata constituency. So I kind of know, like what happens. I know where the goons are hired from. So I'm a bit familiar with that process. Now, with people, like asking for money, because one thing that a lot of people don't know, like these people, like even in the last campaigns, they had shots for both sides, Azimio and UDA.
Yeah, you switch it based upon
you switch it based upon who's coming.
Yes.
Yeah, because some of those crowds were high.
Because it's been monetized.
Yeah, it's
It's a payday.
And
It's a payday.
It's a payday for the citizens.
So here's my pushback is that some of these people, they go out and work for a whole day, and maybe they may make nothing, or maybe they may make maybe even 2 socks a day, or even less. But here you're being told, go attend a campaign event, na mtapatiwa, the event is gonna maybe last an hour and a half, mtalipwa so.
But that's the economy. You see, now that's the economy.
So these people are in desperation. Because
no, the answer to that question is no.
No, I think we're saying no because we come from a point of privilege.
No, I understand. We come from a point of privilege. That's why we're saying no. Let me tell you what I told my constituents in Langata. I told them, we can do that. We can play that game together, right? We can make it so that if I have to come to speak to you, I'll give the money if I have it, right? I can play the game that other politicians have played. However, after this election is over, that tap runs dry.
Mm-hmm.
And then you are left with who you picked. And the other thing I told them is, these leaders are a reflection of who you are. Right? So if you're going to make that deal with the devil, then don't complain when the chickens come home to what?
Roost.
To roost. So the chickens have come home to roost on Kenyans because they selected a certain type of leader. What I'm trying to say here, we understand, and I sympathize with the plight of Kenyans. I understand all that, and I know it very intimately. I didn't grow up in privilege myself, right? So what needs to happen is that just like the Gen Zs have reset the country, because they are looking for who are the financiers of this organization that is driving this protest in the ground. Correct. They are looking for that, but then it's the Gen Z spirit saying, we want to take our country back. And part of taking our country back will have to happen at the ballot box. I want to say this just in terms of like what actually needs to happen. One of two things is going to happen. Either this is going to, continue and then kind of burn out, which is what I hope that, if I was in government today, that's what I would be hoping happen. If I was Ruto today, I would be saying, hey, we are just going to let it it'll just kind of burn the future.
Yeah, they'll lose the momentum.
They'll lose momentum and it'll end that way. What I hope happens is that they take this same fire to the ballot box. Because what will then happen is either you'll change the balance of power, because you need 6/7 of the, I think, 349 seats to be able to not only challenge legislation but also actually impeach the president.
Yes.
For Ruto to go, Kenyans,
we need 2/3.
We need 2/3 of the parliament.
349.
So either in 2027 you need to make sure that you have 2/3, which is like 233 members that are favorable to you, or if we are going to do recalls, which are also very difficult because you have to get in a constituency like Langata, you have to get I think it's
a third of the registered voters.
A third
for the recall vote to be called.
50,000 people.
And it has to be equally spread within the wards.
And it needs to be equally 50% in each ward.
15% per ward.
It has to be 15% per ward. I think it's 30% overall.
Of the
30%
total
overall.
30% of the total registered voters.
And 15 from every ward.
That's very difficult.
It is a very tall order.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're talking about Ruto must go, I think it's a very good clarion call to drive the process, but the actual what needs to happen for that to happen, I want to tell Kenyans it's not going to be easy. So be prepared, not just for this battle, but for the long term more.
But now you're talking about. You see, the thing here is that what. And if you see by what they're demanding right now, I think even the Gen Zs are smart enough. They know they're not just going to tell him to go, but the Gen Zs also know that he needs a parliament to do that, and that's why the Gen Zs are asking to have the power to recall the parliamentarians, and they know that with a weak parliament, he's not going to do a lot of things, and he's going to behave.
Yes,
and that is something I think he's seeing right now, and that is why you see he's trying to make all these handshakes, because he's also losing ground in some people. Some of the people are scared. Yeah, I'm sure some of those MPs are telling him, "No, boss, kutoka hapa to the lake, kutoka hapa, you have to change this." And so it's okay, as you said. The Ruto must go is a good slogan, and it may not be easy to take him out, but if it allows it to tame him. And for him to try to work, and then in 2027 they punish him, that's good. At the end of the day, what we need to do is that keep making progress, whereby we turn these leaders to turn this country around and start working for it. If you see the amount of wealth that is stolen in Kenya doesn't need these loans.
No, we don't.
Now, back to you, Dr. Wangusi. I mean, you and Mika are talking about 2027.
Yeah,
Gen Zs are not trying to wait for 2027. That.
No, Gen Zs want to recall MPs now.
They want to do stuff now. So I mean, of course, the recall process is not easy. But when you think about it, whatever Gen Zs have achieved within the last 4 weeks, was also not easy.
It was also not easy.
Yeah,
so
it was something that we credit to them.
Credit to them.
And, and I know before you finish your thought, let me just say this. The Katiba Institute had to go to court. I don't know if you had pertaining. This was about 2016 because the way the MPs had actually set up the recall was that you needed to get permission from the High Court. There's something to do with you having to get permission from the High Court in order for you to be able to process a recall. That is one. Two.
Actually, that's what's making a lot of them survive right now, because a lot of them have recall cases in the High Court.
And
now.
And the interesting thing is, I can't remember the name of the judge who actually voided that. He said that it was unconstitutional.
Yeah, it was unconstitutional.
It was unconstitutional, and it stopped there. So now it is up to Parliament to restructure the recall clause. But what they did was they restructured for the MCAs, the county governments. They restructured that one where you can be easily recalled, but they have not done anything for the MPs.
But it's okay even if they don't do anything for the MPs, as long as the court has declared it unconstitutional.
It is, yes.
Even if they don't do anything to it, like people can still proceed and start processing.
No. What I'm saying is, one of the constitutional lawyers was saying what they can do and they're going to do. They're going to use the one for the MCA. Okay. Recall for MCAs, for the county government, because it's a copy paste.
Yeah.
Because it's all about legislature.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Mbusi.
Yeah.
Because Gen Zs are not waiting for 2027.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe a referendum might calm them, or is referendum tantamount to dialogue?
No, a referendum is not tantamount to dialogue, depending on what the referendum will be about.
Okay.
So the Gen Zs have not made any demands around
a referendum,
a constitutional change. They have not made any demands. Most of them are actually legislative.
Yeah.
Right? So the IEBC, these programs that had already been funded.
And just follow the existing constitution.
The finance bill. They're saying, we have a good constitution. Let's just follow it.
Yeah.
Right?
So there was that thing called the NADCO report, which I think now...
that one has brought problems because
there's no Gen Z who wants to hear about that.
Yeah,
that
because
report.
of the constitution of the IEBC, because that has brought problems.
Yeah, so the NADCO report was the one that came after the dialogue following Baba's Mandamanos after elections.
Yeah.
So that's when this commission was created, and they came up with that NADCO report. And the NADCO report is kind of like a remake of what BBI was a couple of years ago. So that right there, you're saying is also, you think that that's also off the table for Gen Zs?
I think Gen Zs are saying, tumeongea ya kutosha.
Yeah.
Punda ilichoka. It's not time for us to sit down and talk. It's time for us to actually take action.
Okay.
Right? And they've spelled out what those demands are very articulately, right? We don't need a referendum, or we don't need to go and discuss for then Linda Mama program to be reinstated.
Yes,
we don't need that, right?
Yeah.
For NHIF to be reformed in the way that they are proposing, that just can be done immediately, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do if you're a leader and you're being asked to implement measures that are unpopular, right? So I'm being asked to dismiss all these 40 people from my community. Oh, let's talk first. Let's sit down and talk, and then kind of create a dialogue so that you can
commission task
forces, and then that will also mean that the same people who are coming for those task forces are given allowances, right? So you kind of hoodwink the people. You kind of spin the wheel. But Gen Zs are saying, we want this stuff done tomorrow. And it's really interesting to see how he's struggling to reconcile.
Harakisha.
He wants to play to the gallery, but Gen Zs are saying these cabinet secretaries need to go tomorrow. We're not going to wait. We don't want a commission to tell us these people need to go. We don't need a commission to tell us this, Kalenjinization of government institutions needs to be resolved like tomorrow. With the stroke of the pen, the same sword, he can say, these people need to go home and we need to rehire, reflecting the face of the nation, right? So all the demands that I'm looking at here, using live bullets against peaceful protesters.
Against protesters, yeah.
When we went for our protest at the Kenyan embassy, Ali, you were there, and I'm sure some of the other listeners were there. The mandate of the police when citizens assert that constitutional right is to protect them, not to confront them. And Gen Zs, we're on video, they kept saying, we are peaceful. We want to make our petitions known.
Yeah.
What instead, in typical fashion, you confront them, then you start shooting at them and, you know, blasting them with water cannons and using live bullets on live TV in front of Kenya's parliament. Like,
That's not regular Maji, by
the
the way.
bullets
No.
came after. The bullets came after they realized when the Gen Zs realized this water cannon, we can play with it. So they started playing with it. Even they were hiking rides. Like
Yeah.
you will see, the water cannon is carrying Gen Zs to town to go.
yeah,
protest
so
with
and as when we went for our protest at the Kenya embassy,
Yeah.
we were protected by the Secret Service.
By the Secret Service,
By the
yeah.
Secret Service. I mean, think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
The presidential guard was sent to guard us.
Yeah. You know,
And then we had, remember, we had this young lady who fainted.
yes.
We didn't even know. There were 2 ambulances on standby, one from the Secret Service, one from the
Yeah.
DC police.
They had first aid. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
They came and they took her.
They came and they took her and
Yeah.
then they took care
And
of
then
her.
on top of that, we also had a traffic police officer, and we had a sheriff from the DC police.
Yeah. So it was.
So
it's
what is
very
so
interesting.
hard? Does
Yeah.
that need a constitutional review or like discussion for us to actually like protect our young people when they want to go and talk to their parents about what is wrong with this country?